What's going on, y'all? Welcome to the Blown Coverage Fantasy Football Podcast. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm Waiver Wire Queen. The injury bug is hitting hard, and the injuries are simply piling up over the first 2 weeks of the season. If you have Trey Lance, Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin, we have some players we have identified which will help you going forward in fantasy football. Now, let's talk about those quarterbacks. Jimmy G is a nice replacement for Trey Lance. Obviously, he's on the 49ers and he is going to be the starting quarterback for them going forward. And he is a good ad. Don't expect him to come out and score 30 fantasy points every week. He'll have some really good weeks and then he'll have some so-so weeks. But if you are looking at the waiver wire and you just don't have a lot of options and he's available, he may be able to help you. Or maybe you had Trey Lance coming off your bench. Jimmy can come off your bench. The best ad out of these quarterbacks is Carson Wentz with the Commanders. He has been impressive. He has been shockingly impressive over the first 2 weeks of the season. I don't expect him to sustain this type of production. However, take advantage of it. Over the first 2 weeks of the season, 87 attempts, 57 completions, 650 yards, 7 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, all in the first 2 weeks of the season. I don't know about you guys, but I wasn't expecting Carson Wentz to come out and play this well. If he can sustain this type of production for the season, it's a steal for you on waivers. He will go down as one of the greatest waiver wire ads for the 2022 season. So what you need to do is put the claim in. Don't wait any longer because other people are going to be trying to add him to their roster, whether that is to replace other quarterbacks who aren't playing well or a Trey Lance being out for the remainder of the season, or just leverage and trade. So if you have the opportunity to pick up Carson Wentz, do so. Another quarterback who has shocked the hell out of me, and I know he has shocked some of you guys as well, is Jared Goff with the Lions. He has been solid, better than expected. He is a quarterback who you look at the matchups and say, week 4, he has a very good matchup versus Seattle. So that would be the time that you should take advantage of a player like Jared Goff. Not an every week starter, but again, certain matchups. So far this season, 71 attempts, 41 completions. That's it's a little average from me. 471 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So again, good matchups is what you want to look at. Teams that are not good, the defense isn't really great, then Jared Goff should excel. And another quarterback who should be able to help your team is Marcus Mariota with the Falcons. If I had to choose right now between him and Mitch, because I'm just not feeling either one of them, it would be Marcus because he is at least giving you some type of positive production in fantasy football. So if you are struggling at quarterback and you simply don't have a lot of options and he say is the only option out there, or if it was between him and Mitch, then Marcus should be your guy. So far, 59 attempts, 39 completions. And again, he's going to be the guy that's going to run the football. He has run the football this season, but I expect him to have run a little bit more than what he has. But again, he's going to produce in both categories. Most weeks he may be better rushing-wise statistically than passing-wise. But, that's just simply what it is. So far, 411 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions is simply not great for a quarterback, but he's making up for it with rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. So, again, if you can pick up Marcus Mariota, go on and do so. Now, let's talk about wide receivers. We have a lot of great wide receivers on waivers who can help you. Keenan Allen is out. Mike Evans will miss week 3. You also have Chris Godwin out. You have players who haven't produced, who have stunk it up very bad, and it's got you looking like, well, maybe I need to put this player on waivers. Darnell Mooney. hasn't played well. Part of that is the quarterback play just simply hasn't been good, and the team offensively is simply not great. But let's talk about some of these great ads. Garrett Wilson, rookie wide receiver with the Jets. He's starting to show up. He's starting to get into his rhythm. Joe Flacco is looking for him, and he is putting together a nice first 2 weeks of the season. 22 targets over the first 2 weeks. 8 receptions, 102 yards, and 2 touchdowns week 2. So he is involved. Okay. I know most people were thinking that it was going to be Elijah Moore, but right now it's Garrett. And that may change once Wilson returns, but we don't know. But we want to ride the wave of whoever has the hot hand. And right now it's showing that he has the hot hand. Another great ad, Greg Dortch. One thing we know about the Cardinals is they're going to be down a lot, so they're going to throw the damn football. As you can see what happened in the Raiders game. Shocking loss for the Raiders. Great comeback by the Cardinals. And when you look at what this young wide receiver has been able to do, it's been impressive. You got to think, who was expecting him to be the guy or one of the wide receivers that is involved and has some really good chemistry with Kyler Murray when Rondale Moore suffered the injury, right? Not a lot of people thought about it, but again, we are riding the wave, and you want to take advantage of this young man's production. Rondale Moore missed week 1 and week 2, and you already know Hopkins isn't going to be available for at least 3-4 more games, something like that. So you got to do what you got to do. So if you are in a position to pick up Greg Dortch and he is able to produce for you, good thing for you. And again, Kyler Murray is targeting him. He had a very good week 1 and a good week 2. Week 2, 4 receptions, 55 yards, and a touchdown each week. He is a part of the offense right now. But again, ride the wave and then know when to get off board. Once Hopkins returns, or even so, if Moore returns, then you'll start seeing his snap percentage decrease. But as long as those 2 guys are out, this young man is going to be able to help you. Great flex play as long as those 2 wide receivers are out. Great options at the wide receiver position for the Commanders, Curtis Samuel and Jahan Dotson. Both of these guys have been simply amazing. They've been producing better than the number 1, McLaurin, but we already know everyone's getting involved. They were down on Sunday and came back and won that game. But let's be clear, as long as these guys are producing, you want them on your side. So Curtis Samuel, he is back. He's healthy. He was always a solid wide receiver. It's always just been about health. And again, very impressive over the first 2 weeks of the season. 20 targets, 15 receptions, 135 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Need I say more? And they're going to have him run the football, not often, but a few times. And he's able to capitalize sometimes rushing the football. So Curtis Samuels is always a must-add, probably one of the most added players, if not probably the top added wide receiver after week 1. And if he is still out there, he should be added. And then again, with the rookie Dotson, 10 targets, 7 receptions, 99 yards, and 3 touchdowns over the first 2 weeks. I don't think anyone was expecting him to produce like this over the first 2 weeks, but as long as he is involved in a part of the Commanders passing game, make sure you add him, because ain't nothing like having players in your starting lineup who isn't going to be able to produce. Parrish Campbell, prime example, should have been able to take advantage of Pittman and Pierce being out, and he was a dud and was a no-show. If you would have had somebody like Dotson or one of these other guys, they would have been able to help you. It happens. You just got to be able to visualize it, see it, and project it. Another great ad is going to be 2 of the Tampa wide receivers, Russell Gage and Brashad Perryman. Okay, let's be clear. We do not know if Godwin is going to be ready for week 3. I don't expect him to be. And in the event that Godwin isn't going to be able to go, and then you already know Mike Evans is going to be suspended for getting ejected out of the game versus the Saints. So who is Tom Brady going to be able to is going to throw the football to? It's going to be Perryman and Gage. I want to see more out of Gage. He's underwhelmed and underperformed so far this season. 7 receptions, 41 yards. Should be doing a little bit more considering Godwin is out. Evans got ejected out of the game. But let's see what happens. And then Perryman, I think with him, he is more of a hit or miss. It's a crapshoot with him. He's going to be the guy that Tom is going to be looking to get the ball to downfield. So it's not going to be as many opportunities like I feel Gage is going to get. So both guys are great, but I feel like Gage is the safer bet between those two guys. And one of my favorites, we talked about him last week, Sterling Shepard with the Giants. He is their number 1 wide receiver. I don't think anyone going into the season was expecting him to be the number 1, because I don't even think people thought he would be ready to go with the Achilles, but he is. He looks great. We just need Daniel Jones to connect with him a little bit more. They do have a great rapport. Tony hasn't been involved. It's shocking, but it's the truth. Kadarius Toney has not been a part of the passing game for the Giants, and had high hopes for him this season. But if you have him in a redraft league, it's something to think about. Should you keep him? Should you put him on waivers? Should you just it's hard to keep someone on your roster who's barely even seeing 30% of the snaps. It's like, what the hell am I going to do with that? You have players who we talked about earlier who are seeing more time and being more productive and who can help you right now. Galladay is a player that shouldn't even be on anybody's roster because he just doesn't seem like he is a part of the rotation. Out of the Giants wide receivers, it is Sterling Shepard. He's going to be the guy who's going to always be out there on the field. It's not going to be any, well, we didn't game plan and have him a part of the plan this week, or he's just not doing what he needs to do. He is the longest tenured Giant and he's been the most consistent when healthy at the wide receiver position the last few years. So pick him up. 14 targets the first 2 weeks of the season. Okay. So pick him up, and he had 10 targets week 2. So it's Sterling Shepard at the wide receiver for the Giants. However, Richie James has surprised. Okay, I wasn't even thinking he was going to make the roster. He made the team, and he has been in the mix. So it's a crapshoot because you don't expect him to. You don't know who's going to be involved outside of Shepard, but the first 2 weeks of the season, he has seen targets, 12 targets over the first 2 weeks, 51 yards week 2. So why not add him? Another great option, Jacoby Myers. He's the number 1 for the Patriots. You don't typically see number 1 wide receivers on waivers, but again, with the Patriots, we know that their passing game isn't great. Mac Jones isn't great, and that offense has been struggling. They have been struggling tremendously, guys. However, Mac Jones will target Jacoby Myers. He's gonna always look for him. He looked for him a whole lot versus the Steelers and was able to connect the majority of the time. So if Myers is on waivers and you're looking for help, add him, because 1, he is the number 1, and 2, when all else fails, Mac Jones is going to look for Jacoby Myers. Let's talk about some running backs. Now, the running back position is pretty tough. There aren't a lot of options or good options out there on waivers, but there are still options for you to consider to help build your team up and keep you competitive. Top waiver ad should be Raheem Mostert with the Dolphins. 11 attempts, 51 yards. All that was missing week 2 was a touchdown. It looks like he's passing Chase Edmonds as a starter. Chase Edmonds is not a lead. He's more of the PPR change of pace type back, but he's not even really adding anything as a PPR back right now anyways. But again, Raheem appears to be the guy. So if you can pick him up because we don't leave starting running backs on waivers. Another great ad, Jeff Wilson with the 49ers. He is still available. He is the starting running back going forward. Mitchell is going to be out 2 months. Tyrion Davis Price was in the mix, but now he's going to be out a few weeks with the high ankle sprain. So Jeff Wilson is the guy, okay? Now, I will say, keep this in the back of your head, is we all know that the 49ers always have issues with their running back staying healthy. So at some point, is Marlon Mack going to be activated from the practice squad and in the mix? He did not look bad during preseason with the Colts, and he's a veteran. So that's something to keep in mind. If you have an extra roster spot, add Marlon Mack just to see what happens over the next 2 weeks. Because guess what? We know for sure that Mitchell isn't coming back anytime soon, and ankle sprains, those are very tricky. And at least for maybe 4 to 6 weeks, you know that Davis Price isn't going to be involved. So you know what you need to do. Another great ad at the running back position are the Cardinals running backs, Darrell Williams and Eno Benjamin. Williams was the more productive running back week 2 versus the Raiders. Would be my choice to add, but this is all contingent on what's going to happen with James Conner and his ankle. The team is saying all the right things and that he's good. It wasn't anything major. However, we'll just have to wait and see. So especially if you have James Conner, you definitely want to monitor the situation, and you don't want your league mates to get the advantage over you by picking up the backup in event that Conner cannot go, and now you don't have any of these guys. Again, my choice would be Williams over Benjamin because he looked more productive and more efficient. Benjamin wasn't as efficient as Williams. So you guys need to run it back. You know what you need to do. Now, let's talk about some tight ends. Tight end position. It's not a lot out there, and there have been some tight ends that have underperformed so severely that it's really hurting everything. Top 5 tight end Kyle Pitts has not been a part of the passing game for the Falcons, and a lot of that is about Marcus Mariota and less about Kyle Pitts. So I'll tell you, it's going to hurt some weeks, a lot of weeks, with as long as Marcus Mariota is the quarterback for the Falcons. But let's talk about some of these tight ends you should consider adding. Jawan Johnson with the Saints. He is their starting tight end, it appears. 6 receptions, 83 yards the first 2 weeks of the season. He's involved both weeks. So if you are looking for some help, whether that is someone who can come off your bench to help, he's a starter. Pick him up. Another great option is Logan Thomas with the Commanders. He is healthy. He was good prior to being injured, so I don't see why he can't be good. I do believe he will be the 3rd or 4th options every week, or maybe even pushing him down to the 5th option when you consider Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissic. So you're going to have to just take a chance. He's productive so far, 6 receptions, 82 yards, 1 touchdown the first 2 weeks of the season. But again, there are other mouths to feed on the Commanders' offense, and he's not, in my opinion, in the top 3. That would go to obviously McLaurin, and you have Curtis Samuel. Dotson is in the mix. Then you got to look at Gibson and McKissic. So again, some weeks he may be 3rd, 4th, or 5th. But if he is able to produce and they get him involved in the red zone and he's getting those touchdowns for you, then all is well and we'll be okay. Another running back, I'm going to go back to my running backs. J.D. McKissic with the Commanders, 7 targets, 7 receptions, week 2, 54 yards, just didn't get a touchdown. However, he is a very good PPR back. He is involved in their passing game. and should be added. Right now, he, if nothing else, is the number 2 to Gibson, and they're utilizing him. So don't leave that production on waivers. Now let's go back to these tight ends. Tyler Higbee is another great add at the tight end position. 9 targets, 7 receptions, 71 yards for the Rams. He, in my opinion, going forward will be the 3rd option. If they pull a week 1 again and not get Allen Robinson involved, then he may end up being the 2nd option. But I do believe most weeks he will be the 3rd option. But at least he is involved, in a starting tight end like Higbee should be on your team and not on waivers or on another team's team because you just did not pick him up. So if you are struggling at the tight end position and you have some tight ends who haven't produced, then pick him up. You got, who else? Hooper hasn't produced. CLEMENT. There's no one for the Bears you truly want right now because none of those offensive players are performing at a high level. But you can't just release David Montgomery, right? You just can't. And again, I don't advise to just release Montgomery, Darnell Mooney. For me, if this is not a dynasty league, Justin would be on waivers. If it's redraft, he should be on waivers because he's very inefficient. If he's not going to be running the football, then he's really not going to give you a lot of points fantasy wise, especially throwing the football. It's just not. It's just not there. Let's talk about just some wild card other options for you. Noah Brown, wide receiver with the Cowboys, has a very good rapport with Cooper Rush. Better rapport with Cooper Rush than CeeDee Lamb, and that's because they probably played a lot as backups and during preseason. A sneaky ad, and this is only if Kittle remains out. Wally would be a great option at the tight end position. And this is only if Kittle is out again, and because he has a very good rapport with Jimmy G, and Jimmy G tends to look for his tight ends, and he has had some success with Jimmy G. Another great ad, and this depends on injuries. Ashton Dulin, wide receiver with the Colts, very good week 2, surprising week 2, 5 receptions, 79 yards, outproduced Parrish Campbell. He's only going to have value if Pittman and Pierce is out week 3. So keep that in mind. Josh Palmer and DeAndre Carter for the Chargers have great value, and that's only for 2 reasons. And this is if these 2 things occur. Keenan Allen can't go week 3, and Justin Herbert is out because of the rib injury. So if Chase Daniel is the quarterback, then I wouldn't trust these 2 guys. I would trust them more if Justin Herbert is in the mix. Treylon Burks, wide receiver with the Titans. Again, this rookie wide receiver has had a tough time since being drafted, but I'm feeling like he's going to be turning the corner, and he may end up pushing ahead of Robert Woods and be that number 1, or at least truly be the number 2 opposite of Woods and get more opportunities and have an impact. So again, try to predict these things in advance so you're not having to fight for these players via the waiver wire. All right, y'all, make sure you leave some comments and let me know what players you are considering adding week 3 in fantasy football. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We have a lot of great content, which is going to help you throughout the fantasy football season and prepare every week so you can have the advantage over your competition. Y'all have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the Blown Coverage Fantasy Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Blown Coverage Fantasy Football Podcast.